For years, everyone thought Verizon had the best network, because they did. But now the best mobile network in the U.S. is T-Mobile. T-Mobile's network has the most advanced 5G, with more towers, and their signal reaches further than ever. So you can text and instant talk and say, "You won't believe where I am."
T-Mobile has the best mobile network in the U.S. based on analysis by Ookla of speed test intelligence data 1H 2025. See T-Mobile.com/network.
Whether you're deciding what gifts to buy or which game to watch, there's one place where it feels good to be right. PrizePicks. Our entire Footballers team has been excited each week to share our PrizePicks lineups, and now the NBA is in full send mode. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code DFS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code DFS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome in. We're going to week 16. It's December 16th here. Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganone, and I'm joined, as always, by Matthew. Did you know it's my mom's birthday, Betz?
Is it really? Shout out to Mama Borg. Happy birthday to her. I know we've given her a hard time on the show in the past for the mashed potatoes. We'll see what happens on Christmas. I don't know what the spread looks like. You know, a little different than Thanksgiving, but shout out to Mama Borg, man. That's amazing. You guys do anything fun to celebrate?
We saw her this weekend. We'll do something again as a family this next weekend. I know that she's out in her best ball lineups. They're out. She didn't advance. So that's a little tough right now. I had a lineup on Monday night that I'm just hoping, just like poking, kind of like the meme, like, please do something, Jalen Waddle. Just didn't happen, man. It was sad.
Did your mom play Darren Waller captain?
Yes, she obviously played Darren Waller everywhere. She like we said this summer, Darren Waller is the piece you need at this point in the season. You obviously did not need him and shouldn't be drafting him for the first, 13 weeks of the season. But right now is very, very key. I know you had a good night in Showdown thanks to the Walrus.
I did. Yeah, I took first in a single entry. That was fun. The interesting thing about, I know a lot of other people had success too, so shout out to everybody that had fun and had a good week on Monday night in particular. But the other thing that I was thinking about because of this past weekend's just random, unbelievable performances, like I'm thinking back to some of our conversations throughout the summer on best ball and archetypes, and you want rookies because they peak late in the year, and you can't draft that guy, like he has no upside. And I've said this before, when I had a really good week, it was the Wandale and Jameis week, like a month ago, remember, against the Lions, where they just went bonkers. Like historically, I don't want to speak for you, I have always poo-pooed on Wandale. It's like, dude, his 8 outs like 4 yards. Like, is he really going to beat me? Probably not. But this week in particular is an amazing reminder that we, the fantasy community, I think are good at being like directionally accurate. It is impossible to predict when we are drafting these best ball teams in July, August, whatever, who is going to peak in week 15, 16, 17. It's impossible. Do you remember last year? Tajay Spears was the RB1 in fantasy, yes, in the fantasy playoffs. And look, we have a similar situation going on. Tony Pollard, from the grave is apparently him again. Trevor Lawrence can't miss. Kyle Pitts morphed into the best tight end of all time on Thursday night. That was unbelievable. Michael Wilson, just gets it done, even against the Texans. So this is a reminder to, I think, all of us that are playing best ball and sweating these teams in the playoffs, but also to me and us next year when we're doing these drafts, thinking about 2026, not being so black and white of like, you're not going to need that guy. He's not the one you want. You're definitely going to want this guy. It's just impossible to predict, even though we talk about it, other shows talk about it, in terms of forecasting. Not that we shouldn't have takes and have some directionally accurate, information, but it's just, the NFL's wild, man. It's impossible to predict.
It's also, when you talk about the timing of when players peak, the way that we remember seasons usually is what happened most recently, what happened in the end. And it also affects, like I'm thinking Kyle Pitts and whatever bag he's going to get from an NFL team. It's what have you done for me lately? I was looking at 2 wide receivers that are basically back-to-back in terms of season log fantasy points, but they could not have had more different seasons. So you think about like what our buddy Egbuka's done.
Rookie sensation, wide receiver out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka.
I mean, just crushed the first 2 months of the season. And it's been a dumpster fire over the last 5 weeks. Flip that with like Nico Collins or Jameson Williams, where it's like the last little bit, it's been amazing. So if you were to look at your best ball shares or whatever format you're in over the first month of the season, you're like, man, I'm glad I avoided that. Like, look at what the Texans offense is. Man, you don't want to have any part of that. And I was pretty low on Nico from I was looking at it more as a team concept, not Nico as the player, but I was just lower where you had to draft him. I took a lot of Puka in that spot, which feels great. That Puka's been a great pick the entire year. But Nico is peaking at just the right time where if your team's made it there in best ball, then whatever Egbuka pick people had that they were touting that they were, taking victory laps 2 months in, it's just we forget that this season happens in little chunks. It's like right now we're in this Trevor Lawrence glory zone where it's like, dude, you are crushing right now. If you were there now, the advance rate looks different based on what he did for the first 9-10 weeks of the season. So we have a hard time zooming out and realizing it's kind of about when it happens. And very few players over the course of the season are consistent all the way through. But yeah, I was just looking at a lot of players and like, man, if you had that combination at the right time in weeks 14, 15, 16, like congratulations, but we're not good at predicting
for
that
sure.
stuff.
Yeah, that's the take home here. It's funny when you were talking about Emeka, I almost said his wrong name, Egbuka. Since that moment, since Gronk did that on national television, he's averaging less than 50 yards a game. So thanks a lot, Gronk. You ruined Christmas. No, maybe somebody out there snuck a big boo team through to the semis and he peaks at the right time. But yeah, it's the NFL season. Like when you're doing this weekly, especially in DFS or season long, you like feel the week and you're so intense like on that week that you kind of forget like what even happened throughout the course of the season. So yeah, it's wild, man. Guys peak at the right time and the wrong time, and that's just the luck of best ball, honestly. Like you can be a very skilled drafter, understand right roster construction, ADP values, all those things. But at the end of the day, you're just trying to like draft the best teams and hope you get hot and lucky for 3 or 4 weeks to end the season. That there's luck in this. And there's some people that like argue that best ball is like so skill based. I don't know, man. I don't know.
It can be all the things at once, and we'll do some more reflecting as we, this off season and as we get through. But I find that there is a certain skill that can get your teams to advance because you're avoiding mistakes. It's kind of like DFS. We talk about all the time. Like, okay, I know the couple things I need to get right here. Then there is an element of timing and luck. And then there's this other element of how much volume did you play? So if you maxed out the Millie Maker and you're like, sweet, look at my teams that made it through. Well, that's impressive, but you also had the bankroll to put up 150 teams and hopefully some make it through. And there's variance every single year. So I go back and forth. It depends on my mood of like, I had some teams that I thought I constructed really, really well. I had some, good overall game theory. Like I had some teams this year with 3 quarterback builds that just felt so good that I went that direction and I hit on some of the late round guys, the Sam Darnolds, Daniel Jones, and then they just kind of ran dry at the end. And that's just kind of how it works. So we will do a lot more reviewing about best ball, all that stuff this offseason. But let's talk about week 15 real quick.
Weekly Rewind.
I feel like through 15 weeks, you guys understand our process. You understand how it works from a Tuesday podcast to a Friday podcast to our best plays for DFS. We are hitting the point of the year where Betz and I just need to confess. We have a lot going on between young kids and family commitments, and you're about to travel this next week and you're going to Arizona. You and Monica are. So there is a part of like our reviewing process that just it's the end of the season. It's kind of crazy that it coincides with Christmas. So you will not be doing a small field review article this next week. I've also started to whittle down my entire weekly cash because I like to save some of my bankroll going in the playoffs. So I'm not playing nearly as much cash as I did a couple weeks ago. So any quick review takes you want to give from this past week's overall slate?
I mean, I think the key was going into it, and we talked about this on the show, is like this Lions-Rams game looks amazing, but you have to construct your roster in a smart way, especially for tournaments, around that, understanding like these guys are probably going to go off, but if you play chalk elsewhere and then you have to pivot, like you kind of just have to. I had a few teams that were like that, were kind of struggling in behind. In the early window, I played like a little bit of Saquon, who was like 10, 15%. I played some King Henry, who was fine, for real life NFL, but obviously not good in fantasy, like stuff like that we talked about on the show. And then I did have to pivot off of some Puka and, onto like Darnold to JSN, and it flopped. So I thought it was a really good week for tournaments if you played the smart way. I mean, Kyle, just play James Cook. Just play James Cook early.
I was gonna. You're bearing the lead. Like that was your slate breaker this past week. I feel like James Cook is one of those guys that if we keep touting, like say like 7 weeks in a row, like we might hit on 3 of them, and that makes your bankroll.
So I did have a sweat going with the James Cook team that had the Lions and Rams kind of stack around it. Unfortunately, that team did have Devontae, so didn't really get there. But yeah, I mean, it was the week to set up around that game and then just kind of make smart decisions off of that. I thought it was an interesting slate going into it. Like it felt like there was going to be minimal news, no big deal, and then it was like, is Josh Jacobs going to play? Wait, Emmanuel Wilson, he's also questionable because of illness. Christian McCaffrey got added on Saturday because of his back injury, and that kind of threw a wrench in some things as well. But yeah, interesting slate, really fun, high scoring. It was one of those weeks that you needed at least 200 on DraftKings to put up anything close to a GPP winning performance. So these big games, or these big slates rather, these big 13 gamers, you definitely need a lot to go right to hit that. But yeah, I thought it was a really fun slate. Lots of good football too, just from like a real life NFL standpoint.
Yes, for sure. Like, I mean, my family, we were gathered in our living room by the fire watching Uncle Philly, Grandpa Phil, just trying to chuck it, just trying so hard. Dude, when he fell down that one time, you're like, oh, Grandpa,
like when he slipped on the logo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, look, there's a lot of divisive things in this country, right? Everybody has their own opinions, their own views, and all those things. The one thing that this country needs was Grandpa Philly under center. And we all rallied around him. And I'll tell you what, Kyle, this week, we get the Colts on Monday Night Football. So whatever happens in the world in this country this week, at least know Grandpa Phil is going to bring unity to the United States of America on Monday Night Football.
I am terrified because Tyler Warren has been my tight end in my main leagues. I have Christian McCaffrey. I have Jonathan Taylor on another team. Like my main teams are counting on that game being meaningful. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, do I pivot off Tyler Warren, my dude? Last thing I'll say about the slate is if you zoomed out and you looked at it from there's a lot of people playing these cheap tight ends. It's like, oh, well, here's the Ravens matchup against the Bengals. Here's some of these other cheap guys. Even Harold Fannin, who saw a crazy amount of targets, he just didn't get there in terms of raw points. It was a chance for you to get a different build, because the way that it kind of funneled is I'm going to play an expensive running back in Woody Marks. I'm going to play one of Puka or Chase, or maybe both of them, and then I'm going to punt at tight end. And it kind of funneled people into this same build over and over and over again. So for tournaments, I think if you played, Puka, and you said, hey, you know what, I'm going to get just a little different elsewhere. I'm not going to get into this 2 tight end builds. It's fine in cash, but in tournaments, it's like the piece you needed was Colby Parkinson, right? I mean, that's, or T. McBee. It was nice that we did talk about Parkinson for a while, and I'm kind of scared now because you're going to preview that Thursday night game, which is a great game, Rams and Seahawks. I feel like he has to be a thing, or we want him to be a thing. And yet, because Devontae's probably going to be out, I feel like it's just a classic flop spot.
I mean, that's how it happens, right? These cheap, and this is actually a really good point for DFS, because these cheap tight ends, if we're being totally honest, are all the same. Like any one of these cheap guys, whether it was Harold Fannin, Dalton Schultz, who actually popped up for a huge game, Colby Parkinson, the Ravens guys,
Isaiah Likely.
any of these guys that are priced in this range, any given week can go for a goose egg. They can also happen to run hot on variance in the touchdown department and beat the guy you needed in DFS. And that was my biggest takeaway when I wrote my small field review was like, going into the slate, I got take lock of I am playing Ravens tight end against Cincinnati defense because, well, it's worked every single week. And I don't know if that's hindsight bias or not. I'm sure it is. But at the same time, it's like the position is so volatile, right? If you're not Trey McBride, if you're not the top tier guys, if you're not Brock Bowers, even Brock Bowers is volatile right now, given the state of the Raiders. But if you're not those guys, the entire position is volatile. So in tournaments, it probably makes sense just to lean away from roster percentage, which I'm kicking myself in hindsight because I played likely at like 30% and I didn't even like consider not doing that because I was so locked in. So that's a good reminder for the future. If these cheap tight ends carry a lot of roster percentage, even in good matchups, understand the floor is super low and the volatility there should push you on to low rostered plays in the cheap range. That's my biggest takeaway from this past week.
Yeah, I see. I looked at that and I go, oh, I'm going to see those Ravens tight ends and I'm going to play Mike Gesicki on the other side, who had his highest route share of the entire season. So if you'd have told me before the season or before the game, that the Bengals would be down a ton, Gesicki's going to be on the field more than he's ever been. This is great. The T. Higgins isn't playing. Awesome. Like I'm going to play a cheap tight end at 3,300. Didn't matter at all.
These guys are all the same.
That's how it works. It was a great week across the board in our Discord, in our props, which we'll share in a second. This first one is from Phil, who tagged me on Twitter. He said, I took down a nice small field tourney thanks to the DFS pass, leaning on the money savings with Dart and ETN to get both Puka and Amon-Ra in my lineup. The wife and I are enjoying a third round of Presidente Margaritas tonight.
Phil, you dog. 3 rounds. I mean, he's probably going to be hungover for days.
Phil, you sound like you had a good night. Also, most played 07 in Discord. I put my afternoon only lineup in the Millie this week and was an easy 1v1 swap from the winner. Thanks for all the tips, guys. I'm sure I won 4th for $1,500 in the $5 afternoon only single entry. Bletz33 also won $400. We had a good week overall for everybody.
Yeah, awesome week. Benny Hanna said, I want to thank God because God gave me this Dundee and I feel God in this Chili's tonight, which I really appreciated. So awesome score, $1,100. And then we had Houday Zach, who is a apparent diehard Bengals fan. I'm sorry, Zach. Had a really nice week on FanDuel. And I actually asked him about this. I said, did you play the same team in all your contests? And he said, yeah, I usually build like 1 or 2 teams and enter it in different contests, which some people really like because it's like an all or none kind of thing. Like if that lineup hits, you're winning a ton, or the variance could swing the other way. But he had an awesome week on FanDuel. Took him almost $2,700 across different contests. So amazing to see. A lot of people had success, and then we had an awesome week in props too. I think the final count was 11-3, up 6.5 units this week, which brings us to almost plus 20 units on the year. And it hasn't really felt like the most amazing prop season because we haven't had like huge week after huge week. It's been like
because last year we were burning like the sun.
That is accurate. But we've been able just to stack profitable weeks throughout the year. And, that's the most important thing is just zooming out, right? When you're so focused on what happens in one week and you have a losing week, you're like, I'm not doing this ever again. And then you miss out on the next week. So you just have to be able to ride the kind of peaks and valleys throughout a long NFL season, let's be honest. That goes all the way back to early September and we go through the Super Bowl. So zoom out, make sure that you're thinking about that when you're doing this betting and DFS stuff. And, just kind of understand there's variance on a week-to-week basis. But again, we feel like we got a pretty good process and we've been able to stack some wins here over the last couple of weeks. Hopefully we can close out pretty strong. And I really can't wait for week 18 props, Kyle, because we're going to be taking some unders on 4th string tight ends and 3rd string running backs. I mean, it is going to be a glorious time of the year.
Yeah, Betz mentioned it, but we're almost at plus 20 units this year. I feel like it's been a good consistent process for us. Sometimes people wish we would take more props, but I do think we've got a good thing going, especially since we've been doing this last couple of years. It was nice. We only took 2 overs this past week, and they both hit.
Are we overs now? Overs only?
Overs only, but the asterisk is we can only take 2 of them a week.
And they have to be on obscure players, like Ty Johnson.
Yeah. Ty Johnson over was a fun one to be able to get. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk about this week 16 slate.
Primal Kitchen is known for outrageously delicious sauces and condiments, and now their pure avocado oil can be a staple in your kitchen too. With its high smoke point, neutral flavor, and healthy fats, it's perfect for grilling, baking, sautéing, marinating, whatever you're cooking. Primal Kitchen Pure Avocado Oil gets the job done. Pure, quality tested, and trusted. Grab a bottle at Walmart stores nationwide or online at walmart.com.
The college football playoff is everything. Toughness, growth, sacrifices.
Laser focus.
This is where I think
everything you got all damn day.
The attention to detail is like none other.
Keep physical. Keep playing. We are the winners.
Tulane takes on Ole Miss, followed by James Madison in Oregon.
It's time to bring it.
First round coverage of the college football playoff presented by Allstate. Saturday at 3:30 Eastern on TNT and HBO Max. Are you ready?
Let's go!
State of the main slate.
I am looking at the main slate for week 16. There's 11 games, a little smaller because we have a Saturday doubleheader. So Betz will be in Arizona for our company Christmas party, and 2 games will be going on during that. The Eagles and Commanders, so you can sweat that out there. And then Packers and Bears, which, some of the employees of our company are Bears fans, some are Packers fans. That will be a fun one to be able to be a part of.
I'm excited for that night game. Packers and Bears, huge implications in the NFC playoff picture. I don't think we'll have Ramadunze. We'll see on Luther Burden. No Micah Parsons.
I need to explain something to you, though.
Kind of a lot of injuries there.
So I got to explain something to you because I know that you look at this, we see the start time at 8:20. And as somebody who lived in Arizona for a few years, you'll be like, what? This game's over and I still can hang out? It's such a weird feeling that the primetime game is over at 7:30.
I mean, I'm usually, if I'm being honest, on the Thursday, Sunday, Monday games. I mean, those things end sometimes at 11:30, 11:40. Kyle, this is taking years off my life, dude. I'm sitting there on the couch holding my eyelids up, sweating a Tua under at 11:30 last night. So I'm very excited to see a football game end at a reasonable hour and then go to bed on normal time.
What a funny social moment of explaining to your wife or anybody, hey, I'm really trying to stay up because I'm trying to watch this quarterback not throw pass attempts.
he almost got us, man. One more, we would have been an L there. But yeah, but speaking of that game, what were the Dolphins doing? Did you see the fourth quarter?
At this point, I realized that okay, these are professionals, these are human beings that play this sport. This is their job. And then there's parts where you zoom out and you go did this not get explained to you? The Chris Jones thing where they were telling him hey man, you guys are out of the playoffs, right? He's like, what? I mean, and maybe it's because we are so far removed and we know all the scenarios and that's not as important as just winning the game. But there's just so many parts of this where I feel like players and coaches, we have the hindsight analysis to be what are you doing? And in the moment, I'm maybe there's just no conversations going on.
Well, the thing that was weird, they didn't go no huddle and hurry up until there was 3 minutes left and the game was already over. When they were down multiple scores, even Troy Aikman was I don't get it. They're still going to huddle up, and they were snapping it with 4 seconds left on the play clock, even though they needed to go down and score immediately. So it was just weird. It's almost like they waved the white flag and, we're kind of moving on. But yeah, that was interesting to say the least.
So we have a Thursday night game, Rams and Seahawks, which is amazing. By the way, that line has moved back and forth on either side. As of right now, it is the Seahawks favored by 1.5. But yeah, it's gone back and forth 3 times in terms of who's favored in just the last 24. Yeah, snip, snap, snip, snap. Doubleheader on Saturday, and then we have our Sunday and Monday night games. But for the main slate for DFS, there are 11 games, and we have some that are hovering around that 50-point mark, including the Dolphins turn around and they play at home against the Bengals, which is great news that we heard on Monday. Joe Burrow's playing. They want to win. We need that for the game that we play. I need that in a couple of my leagues. I need this game to be competitive. But Dolphins and Bengals, the only one right now sitting at 50.5. The Cowboys and Chargers is at 49.5, as well as the Lions and Steelers. So those are the highest total games of the week. Hit me with the teams with the highest implied total.
All right, starting at the top, we got the Lions at 28.3, the Bills 26.3, those Dolphins that we just talked about, and the Texans both tied at 26, and then the Cowboys 25.5.
So when I look at this slate and I'm trying to parse through it, there are games, so we talked about the highest total games, there are games that just look like absolute duds. So when we get to that section of discussing it, it's like, I might just cancel these players out of my player pools. It's just like, I don't think I need any of them. And there's a couple environments where teams are more motivated than others. We'll talk about that more too as we go throughout the week. But Cincinnati, Miami seems like it's going to be the one that people flock to the most. I think Darren Waller is going to get clicked a ton this week in the same way that the Ravens tight ends did this past week. I mean, his price is just completely abandoned. He's 3,500. So I think this matchup in general, you get a Mike Gesicki revenge game. There's a lot going on in this game.
For sure. This is going to be the most popular one just because, like you said, the matchup with the Bengals for Waller, Achan's always in play for his ceiling. And then you look at the other side with Burrow and Chase, and we'll see on T. Higgins. But if Higgins misses, then you kind of know what you're getting in terms of the value options for the Bengals. And then I will say for Chase Brown, Samaje Perine left last week's game with an ankle injury. In those 3 or 4 games that Perine was out, Chase Brown was like literally a 95% type snap player, getting everything in the backfield. So he would become one of the most obvious cash plays if Perine misses again. So I do think, while I'm excited about this game, I do want to point out early in the week, it feels like it probably will be pretty popular. So just something to consider as the week goes on. But yeah, that game looks pretty good, especially with the over-under sitting at 50.5 points.
I think the Steelers at Lions will be another game that I will have circled. It's at 49.5. It's a dome game. And since their week 8 bye, Lions games have hit the over in 6 of their last 7. So I look at how the Steelers, they're right back where we thought they would be. They're 8-6 right now. They're going to end up 9-8, or, they're going to end up exactly where we always think they're supposed to be.
They could win the division, though.
I know. I'm telling you, every single year, same story. 2 weeks ago, though, everyone wanted to fire Tomlin.
Yeah, when James Cook was running all over him in that game. The stadium was literally chanting, "Fire Tomlin." And now, I don't know if you follow any of the Steelers beats on Twitter and stuff. I mean, all do great work. But it was just funny. It was 2 weeks ago, and I love NFL, man. It's so reactionary. And even I'm like this with the Eagles, right? I hated that team 2 weeks ago, and now I'm like, all right, 31-0 against the Raiders. We're back. But they were talking about how Aaron Rodgers has played so well this year, and it's I can't believe we got Rodgers. It's guys, he's been incredibly mediocre the entire season. Last night, he played well, granted, but everyone was Super Bowl, It's okay. It just gets me every time.
Do you think that your entire state needs to look at themselves in the mirror?
Yeah, we do. We do.
I mean, I don't have the same experience that you do, being a Pennsylvania guy through and through. The Keystone State, correct? Now, why is it called that?
I believe, and somebody out there knows the answer, so I'm going to sound like an idiot probably. I believe it's because when, the great United States of America was founded, Kyle, it was right in the middle of all the 13 colonies. And so they were the Keystone in the middle. The Keystone holds up the arch or whatever. I believe that's the reference, but that's probably not right.
It's not a Keystone Light reference.
Oh, dude. Oh, brother. No, it's not. However, I feel bad because my second or third grade teachers probably listening to this and they're like, Matthew, we talked about this. Come on.
See, Georgia history, did you guys have to do that sidebar here? I don't know, it was 5th grade or early middle school. That's you learn about just your state in your history. Okay, so, I had my Georgia one, and all you get to learn about Georgia, it was a buffer colony. It's we're just, the Spanish are there, and we're the Americans, and you guys are just the prison colony where you send people. I was like, oh, cool. That's cool. That's not that great. Okay, so Pennsylvania, you guys can figure out how you're feeling based on the week. It's just a very bipolar relationship with your teams.
It is.
It's pretty weird. Sneaky games this week. I mentioned it earlier, Chargers at Cowboys. Jerry and the boys. let's just say that there is a small percentage. I think it's under 1%. They need the Eagles to lose out, and then they need a bunch of stuff. I think it's under 1%. They're still going to be playing their players. And this year, we understand that Cowboys games have been the gift that we keep receiving over and over again. 59.1 combined points per game. That's number one in the NFL. It's still a game that I have circled this week in a dump.
For sure. It makes a lot of sense. I do think in that game, the one thing I'm monitoring, I did not see the specifics on Quinnen Williams. He kind of got banged up in that game Sunday night, so make sure you monitor that news throughout the week, but he would be a huge piece because I could see that game going crazy. I could also see him and the Cowboys defensive line kind of wrecking the game just because the offensive line for the Chargers is atrocious, but I am definitely interested in that game for sure. I will throw out Atlanta and Arizona, the battle of the sad birds of this league. There's no weather issues here, which is always a concern in late December. These defenses are atrocious. Arizona over the last 6 weeks is dead last. They're giving up 36.2 points per game. Their games are hitting the over every single week. The Falcons games are hitting the over basically every single week because they are giving up 27.2 points per game. So I'm worried about potential roster percentage here in this game just based off what it looks like for, Jacoby, again, Michael Wilson, Trey McBride. We'll see on Drake London, but people might want to chase Kyle Pitts. So I'm interested in this game, but I am definitely willing to say with the caveat of depending on what the roster percentage looks like, but it's hard to poke holes in the spot.
Yeah, and we're going to have to wait on news about Drake London. If he plays, how does that shift the game? If he doesn't, what does that do to Kyle Pitts, who is not cheap anymore, but he is Jerry Rice as a tight end. So you got to figure out what you're going to do. I will have my eyes glued on that game for many reasons because it's footballers in my teams, but also I have Jacoby in both my leagues. And I'm potentially starting him over either Justin Herbert in the game I just talked about and maybe Drake May.
Wow. Who do the Patriots play?
They play at Baltimore on Sunday night.
Wow.
I know. These are tough decisions that I did not think that Jacoby Brissett would be bringing to my life in late December. But here we are. So, the game that I want to be underweight on is Kansas City at Tennessee. You thought that this would be a game a couple weeks ago, like, okay, Kansas City's still going to be fighting. It's going to be Gardner Minshew. And I did like at the end that he wanted to win it for the team. I kind of liked that he was like going for it, and it just didn't work. We'll talk about Gardner later. He's cheap, so that's a conversation. But Tennessee's quietly been really good at running the ball the last couple weeks. The offense has looked, it looks like an offense that works in the NFL as opposed to a team that should not be in the league for the first 12 weeks of the season. But overall, I think this is a game I want to be underweight.
How do you think the Chiefs are in this game? Just like the Chiefs don't know they don't understand how to play meaningless games. Literally, since Mahomes has been on the team, they're going to the playoffs every year, so they don't understand.
It's the Week 18 games where they rest everybody. That's all.
That's what I'm saying. So, in this game, if you're thinking about Kelsey and Rashee Rice and all those guys, do they come into this spot motivated? Do they just not care? I think there's a lot of systemic risk on the Chiefs this week. I mean, these guys are professionals. I'm sure they'll be ready to play. I'm not saying that. It's just, this is literally uncharted waters for Andy Reid's Chiefs.
Yes.
And I could absolutely see the Titans just somehow knocking them off with a random 17-14 win. So you're the sides and totals guy. I don't want to step on any toes here, Kyle, but I'm kind of interested in the Titans.
I know Titans at home. I would take the plus 3.5 right now, early in the week. Rice is motivated. I know we're talking about more narrative based stuff, but for a player that will be asking for a contract this offseason, there is stuff still at play.
Rice is in a contract year
the rest of the year. No. He will be negotiating into it. I think he's in year 3. Yeah. No, there's a lot of players right now that going from year 3 to, Drake London is going to ask for a bag this offseason. And he should get it because he's like, hey, when I'm not in the field, here's what happens. Kyle Pitts is going to say, hey, when Drake London's not on the field, look how great I am. Except he's going to end up being I don't know, Kyle Pitts feels like one of those players that gets overpaid to go to the Jets or something.
And then he just slowly fades away.
I don't know, man. All pro's happening. He's a tight end 3 on the season.
That is absurd.
I know. It's pretty crazy. Which game are you not feeling so hot about?
So this one sounds silly when I'm about to say it, but I feel like this is a sell high spot on two quarterbacks who are historically very, very volatile. So I put down Jacksonville and Denver. And to Trevor Lawrence's credit, over the last month, he has played very, very well. On the other side, Bo Nix he played very well in that game Sunday against the Packers, but we kind of know like the floor also exists. So this is one where it's like, I don't know, the Jags defense, is definitely up and down, but they have some highs. Denver obviously is a great defense. It just kind of feels like a spot where I could see the bottom not falling out, but like you're not going to get these crazy ceiling performances we just saw recently. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it.
We will be talking Trevor Lawrence on this week's Dynasty podcast if you want a full breakdown, because there's lots of different angles you can take when a quarterback gets really, really hot. And it's like kind of what I said earlier. Like if this happened in reverse, where Trevor Lawrence got really hot in week 3 or 4, then it would be a different conversation. But because of the timing and what happened recently, it's definitely feels like we're counting and even double counting when you have 6 touchdowns against the Jets. But overall, they're letting him throw downfield more. Like he's not throwing. Remember when he used to just throw a ton of screens and behind the line of scrimmage stuff? They're letting him throw downfield since the bye. So it is a game, though, that you feel like you don't want to pay for what happened last week. And that's kind of what you're going to end up doing. So the team this week that I am most confident hitting the over their implied total is the Lions. You talked about it earlier. They're at 28.3. I think Big Dan is going to light a fire under the boys after they lost. They are number 1 in the league in points per game at home, 33.7. And I went back through every single home game this year. They've scored 24 plus points in every single home game this year. So against the Steelers at home, this is definitely a spot where I like the Lions.
Love it. Still mathematically alive, so they're going to be fighting, of course. And then you get the Steelers defense off of short rest with Monday night, so I love that call. I'm going to go with Grandpa Phil, man. This sounds scary after the arm strength that was on display in Seattle, but I just think it's a better spot. You come back home, 20.5 for Indy. They're taking on the 49ers, who have played well considering the circumstances, but remember, they just have so many injuries defensively. And you get Indy back at home where they can run the football in this matchup, I think, so it sets up much better for Jonathan Taylor. And you look at what Cam Ward and Tony Pollard just did last week. Pollard and Spears averaged 9 yards per carry in this matchup just a week ago. So I think it's a get right spot for Jonathan Taylor. Rivers will do enough, put them in scoring position to help us get to 21 points.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the Seattle pass rush and the San Francisco one, which is non-existent, right? They're dead last in the league in sacks. And then since Nick Bosa's been out, I believe they're bottom 2 or 3 in pressure rate. So I'm at least, I could see the offense functioning a little bit better. I just don't understand how defenses don't just push all the way up and say, this dude is not going to be able to throw the ball 15 yards down the field.
He has to at least try to open up the defense a little bit. So yeah, that is a key. Like, it's going to be a fun X's and O's matchup of like Salah knows Phil can't throw 25 plus yards down the field. And Steichen knows he can't do that. So like, how do they get, like you said, how do they get the defense to loosen up a little bit?
You have to get, okay, so that touchdown pass to Josh Downs, which we were all so excited. Like even my kids, when I was explaining to them about who Phillip Rivers was, when he scored that touchdown, Josh Downs, and kind of that crossing route near the goal line. I mean, what was it, like a 4-yard throw? It's like, that's how you get it to work. You need mismatches and people coming across the field. Phillip Rivers can read a defense.
Oh yeah.
So he take like 1 sack.
Yeah.
So, hey, it can work. The team that I am most confident hitting the under is a shocker. It's the Raiders. It's 14.5. They've hit their implied total just once on the road this entire year. They've averaged 10 points per game on the road this year. I went back. That is the lowest of any team since 2012. They had 75 yards of offense, total offense against the Eagles. But I'm going to ask you a very, very serious question. I want to see if you know this. The Raiders have 1 win on the road this year. Do you know who it was against?
Oh, that was week 1 against the Patriots.
How did that happen?
I have no idea.
Dude, Gino
actually, you know how they didn't have Christian Gonzalez. He was out.
Gino threw for like 360.
Dude,
in
it's
Foxborough.
so funny. In week 1, the Raiders front office and the coaching staff, they were like, look, we got it. We got Pete. We got Gino. Bowers is him. And then it just went south real quick.
It's just a wild, like when you look back every single year, I used to write an article that's like the most what the heck games of the year. We're like, how the heck did this team, like we're going to look back and be like, how did the Falcons beat the Bills? Or, how did the Raiders beat the Patriots in Foxborough? So I don't have any confidence in the Raiders this week on the road against the Texans.
Fair enough. I'm going to take the Panthers under 21.5. To Bryce Young and the Panthers' credit, like they've been good this year. Like they've had some up and down moments, of course, but I feel like Tampa Bay, this is a spot where they can kind of get right. Defense obviously struggled and gave up the game of his life to Kyle Pitts, but I think Todd Bowles can rally the troops here. If you saw his post-game presser, he was livid. So you get this extra rest here. Huge matchup. This game is one of the last couple here down the stretch that's going to decide the division. And you look at Bryce Young specifically against the blitz. He's 28th in passer rating, 25th in yards per attempt, 30th in EPA per dropback. So I think Todd Bowles is just going to blitz his face off relentlessly in this game, and I'll side with the under here on Carolina.
The entire division doesn't really know what it wants to be. Okay, it's really sad when you just think about like they're just going to keep beating up each other over and over and over again. So, yeah, I mean, it kind of comes down to these two games. They play again in Week 18. I think Todd Bowles is going to be up for it. They've been so bad, though, the Buccaneers.
They have.
You think when they went on the bye, it would be better for them. But the entire offense has sung, other than Mike Evans looking good last week and Bucky having spurts. It's not been good at all. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
'Tis the season of gifting and halls to deck, and the Who's and Who Newville were in love with new tech. Where can we find Sonos and Samsung and Nintendo, they shouted. Would they find it in one place? This they questioned and doubted. When suddenly a Who yelled, Walmart's the place to start! And each Who added headphones, TVs, and games to their carts. With Walmart, their shopping was done in a flurry. They cried out, who knew? And ordered their gifts in a hurry. Shop the latest tech gifts in the Walmart app.
The McDonald's Snack Wrap is back. You brought it back. Ranch Snack Wrap. Spicy Snack Wrap? You broke the internet for a snack. Snack Wrap is back. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Salary standouts.
Early in the week, here's some players that we have circled for our player pools. And at quarterback, we are left with the exact same decision that we've had to make every single week, which is who is the 5K quarterback that DraftKings decided not to pay up or make us pay up for? And Jacoby Brissett is only 5,300. You talked about the matchup earlier. It's at home. The Falcons are 30th in scheduled adjusted fantasy points over the last 5 weeks against quarterback. It's in a dome. I mean, the insane volume you're going to get every single week this is like us playing fantasy 10 to 15 years ago with Matthew Stafford on those Lions teams. Like, oh, I'm going to get 45 pass attempts. This is great.
Or who could forget Blake Bortles? Remember those years?
Oh, dude, I won a dynasty title with Blake Bortles.
That's so funny, man. Yeah, I mean, look, last week, and I've said this for 2 weeks in a row, I was like, against the Rams, no way. Against the Texans, no way. Jacoby doesn't care. Doesn't care. And now they lost Bam Knight, which, like, you're not building your offense around Bam Knight anyway, but, like, are they going to feed Amari DiMercado 20 carries? Of course not. So how does he not throw 40, 45 pass attempts in this game? It's hard to argue with that price and cash. I will say, if you wanted an even cheaper option, I mentioned I'm a little concerned about the Chiefs as far as, like, systemic risk, but Gardner Minshew is 4,500. It's been a wild ride with Minshew through the years, but like for fantasy, he will have some nice games for us. So I still think the matchup's good. I'm at least interested in him. Maybe not in cash, but like as a pivot in tournaments.
I think it's not going to be hard. Like the conversation we're having now, we're going to have the same one on Friday, and it's going to be Jacoby Brissett in cash.
It's always Jacoby.
It's
King
always
Jacoby.
been. What a fun ride. What a fun year for him. All right, running back, Devon Achane, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. They're all in the upper 8K region. All of them are in great spots. I don't really know how I'm going to parse through them, check back in later in the week. It was nice, though, when we talked about this past week, CMC versus Gibbs. We went back and forth, and CMC didn't have a crazy awesome game, but it was one where we leaned more into that, and we said there is risk with Gibbs. And you kind of saw that Gibbs has been weird. If you played him or played against him, it's like 3 touchdowns or nothing. And the Lions are 0-6 in games where he doesn't score a touchdown. I think he scores a touchdown this week. I think they do win at home against the Steelers. But those are the 3 running backs early in the week that I'm probably going to have at least one in my cash lineup.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, they all look incredible. I don't have a take right now as to which one I prefer, but the answer to all 3 is yes. If you're playing a bunch of lineups this weekend, I think you want exposure to all 3 guys. Huge ceilings and awesome matchups, so they are all awesome. In the cheaper range, I know it wasn't an amazing game for Aaron Jones this past Sunday night against the Cowboys, but he's only 5,200. The Giants, we can, obviously run on them. Everybody has all year. I thought he looked pretty good, and you just need J.J. McCarthy to be functional at quarterback to keep the offense moving down the field. And to McCarthy's credit, he played, I won't say incredible, but he was pretty good in that game against the Cowboys. Granted, it's the Cowboys, but good matchup here for the Vikings offense in general. So I'm interested in Aaron Jones. And then I just want to throw out, I'm monitoring the cheap New Orleans running backs right now. I don't think they'd be slam dunk plays, but they're at least cheap. I don't know how talented these guys are either. Audric Estime and Evan Hull, if Devin Neal is at least at, which I think he will be with the hamstring. And we're still waiting on Alvin Kamara. So just put him in your player pool, circle back. It's funny. Evan Hull was kind of like a dynasty darling a few years ago. Some people really liked his profile and stuff. So who knows, but just wanted to throw that out there. They're at least on the radar.
It's funny because Hull is a pass catching specialist, or at least that's what he was in college. He was with the Colts for a while. Estime was with the Broncos. They released him as kind of like an early down guy. And yet Estime also got some passing work, and Hull got the early down work. So it's reversed in how they were used this past week. But I think Aaron Jones feels safe at 5.2. We'll talk about the Saints guys later on. And then we'll also talk about Chase Brown. If you want to go that direction. If you wanted to play Achane and Chase Brown together, those dudes and the way that they work for their offense is totally fine by me.
Love it. Yeah, on FanDuel, just real quick on Chase Brown, he's 7.2. That's a very, very, very cheap price for a starting running back over there. So I think he's going to be mega, mega popular, which in cash obviously is great. We'll talk about that more in tournaments on Friday.
At wide receiver, we're having the same conversation of which expensive wide receiver do I pay up for. We can't pay for Puka because he's on Thursday night. We can't pay for JSN, also on Thursday night. So it kind of comes down to Jamar Chase against the Dolphins, Amon-Ra, who's been insane recently at 8,400. If you go a little further, there are some guys that I think are going to stand out for tournaments. If you want to play CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens from that Dallas game, Nico Collins, who was great this past week. Now he's priced up at 7,500. That one's interesting to me. But I wanted to focus more on this middle range because I think that's where lineups are going to huddle. I think people are going to look at this range and see the value of Jameson Williams at 6,400, who's now the wide receiver 8 in the season. In that same game, DK Metcalf is really, really cheap. I mean, it's one of those things where they priced him even before this past week, but 5,400 on the road against the Lions, I think that's a great tag for him.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I will say he's a guy that I think will project decently, but we know there's a wide range of outcomes on his usage. So he's a guy that I'm interested in because the matchup's great, but at the same time, it's do I really want to play that into chalk? So we'll see what happens with roster percentages. Come Friday, I just wanted to highlight this. I don't know what this means. I don't know if I'm going to do anything about it. But Justin Jefferson is 6K. And the last time we brought it up of hey, he's never been cheaper, he of course did nothing. But man, McCarthy, just take a little heat off the ball, dude. Because every time he throws it to Jefferson, it is a freaking laser, even if they're 10 yards apart. He hits him in the hands all the time. It's just a little bit too high or a little bit, too low. If you could just put it on him, Jefferson can break the slate at this tag. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. We'll see.
What do you think I should tell my grandkids when they look back and they're obviously doing their DFS research years from now, and they're going back through the archives and they look at week 16, they say, "Hey, Grandpappy, why was Wanda Robinson more expensive than Justin Jefferson?"
And you just break out the meme, the 9 meme?
Yeah, you just say, so there's this guy, who is that guy? I was like, yeah, he didn't play in the NFL very long. And his coach started to hate him, slowly but surely. But yeah, Justin Jefferson, 6K. Yeah, Tedero McMillan and Igbuka in the same game are interesting. They're below him. I think those two, if you're looking at that game and stacking that one up, it's interesting to me. Monitor the Chargers wide receivers. I know Cuge didn't play this past week, so it hasn't been great recently. Justin Herbert, the entire offense really over the last 5 or 6 weeks has not been great. But Ladd's only 6,100. My boy Keenan Allen, 4,800. Trey Harris is on the field over 80% of the snaps this past week. I think one of those wide receivers could pay off, especially against the Cowboys defense. So just kind of wait later on the week and kind of check out the Chargers wide receivers. It's hard to figure out cheap guys this early in the week, but like Trey Harris, if I knew that Cuge was out, Trey Harris at 3,300 would be I would say an easy cash type of play.
For sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. No, I don't have any takes right now just because we're waiting on information and stuff. For the cheap guys, the only one that I would kind of just think about, and I don't even know if this really would apply, but like Devon Vele left that game with a shoulder injury. He was seen in the locker room with a sling on his left shoulder. If he is out, obviously you give a boost to Chris Olave, and I think Juwan Johnson would be interesting for tight end, but there would be somebody else running routes for the Saints that would be dirt cheap. Mason Tipton, I don't know, maybe just a large field dart throw. I don't know if I would go there in cash, but that's the only other situation that popped in my head right now. Otherwise, we'll circle back on Friday.
And as I know everybody across the world is waiting on, Drake London news does matter this week.
Oh, big time.
On a couple different levels because it's a game environment. But if he doesn't play, the wide receivers are Mooney at 4K, your boy David Sills the fifth, who is 3,700. And then the bigger conversation point is Kyle Pitts, senior, who is now 5K. Do you think if London is out, that Pitts is going to get played a ton?
Yes.
Do you think that is wise at 5K?
Oh, man. Kyle Pitts at 5K just feels dirty. I'm not going to lie. But he probably will project well.
I want to say the morning after. So that was Friday, after the game of all games. Did I break out my Kyle Pitts jersey to wear to the bus stop to put my kids on the bus? Heck yeah, I did. I got so many high fives from they're not even rival dads. They're just fellow Falcons dads. Feeling alive.
Dude, I know you posted on your Twitter the scene from The Office where Michael thinks about breaking up with Jan, and then he sees her enhancements after the fact and says, you know what? Everybody deserves a second chance. That was so perfect, and it applies so well to Falcons plus Kyle Pitts, where it's like for the last 3 years, everybody hated this guy, and now we're like, you know what? Maybe we got a good thing going. So if you understand the reference, please watch it again on Kyle's Twitter. It's so good. The other thing with the Falcons, I want to say, what the heck, man? Darnell Mooney has not been on the injury report the last couple of weeks, but during the broadcast, Kirk Herbstreit was like, Mooney's not 100%. He's been battling a rib injury. Where is it on the injury report? Why is it not listed? If I would have known this, Kyle, I probably wouldn't have been playing him at the rate I did in that showdown slate or the week before as leverage. Why are they not reporting it? FBI, investigate the Falcons.
There's a lot of shady things going on. Not to give too much more Falcons airtime, but before the game, there was a report on Thursday that Arthur Blank, our owner, dude who founded Home Depot, so kind of a big deal, said,
more of a Lowe's guy.
It's okay, man. That's fine. I like to support local businesses. Just struggling local businesses here in Atlanta. He basically said after the season we'll address this. So we got 4 more games in the season, and we're all like, oh, come on, dude. You need to fire this whole regime now. They go out and they win an awesome game. It was a fun game to watch. And now, of course, it's going to be like, well, let's bring the gang back together again. It could work. Let's sign Kyle Pitts to a crazy deal.
One more ride, baby. I mean, at least they have the quarterback situation solved.
Dude, Kirk is dealing, as long as it's the Buccaneers.
Kirk against the Buccaneers. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer.
Dude, we play well against the Bucs. People don't realize that. Last year or two, it's been good. Other tight end options, if you don't want to play Kyle Pitts because you don't want to hate yourself potentially, I think Darren Waller's going to get clicked a ton at 3,500 after the 2-touchdown game and because they're the Bengals. That one makes a ton of sense. Theo Johnson is 3,700. I wanted to give a punt option because it's fun. Titans rookie tight end Gunnar Helm. Any thoughts?
Anything else you want to say about that?
What if I told you over the last 5 weeks, he has been targeted on 29% of his routes? Only Harold Fannin Jr. is higher among all tight ends, not rookie tight ends, all tight ends.
I knew you had a fun stat to share. You were just waiting for the right moment. Yeah, I mean, look, at that price, you can convince me of anything. So I don't mind it. I will say over on FanDuel too, I mentioned the Devon Bailey injury. Juwan Johnson is 5,100. Very, very cheap for a guy who probably sees, 6 to 8 targets.
You remember when we were hot and heavy with Juwanson?
The first month of the season?
Yeah.
We're back.
That's kind of somebody like, oh yeah, I went on a couple of dates with them beginning of, I don't remember it, but yeah, we had a good time. It was a long time ago. I feel like we've lived like 5 different seasons since then, but and if you're sorting by targets per dollar, which is one of the things you can do in the DFS pass, he is definitely going to show up as a value. But so is TJ Hawkinson, who apparently still plays football.
Man, the fall of TJ Hawkinson it's sad.
He looks like he's 38 going on 58, but he's only 28, I believe.
I mean, we got Phillip Rivers out here at 44, so long career ahead for Hawkinson.
At defense this week, I think the Titans are going to be the easiest click in cash at 2.5 against Gardner Minshew. I did want to bring up the Broncos as an interesting leverage play at home. You know how good they've been all year against Trevor Lawrence. They're only 3.2, so they're not priced up very much. They're kind of in that mid-range that'll get overlooked. So they're interesting for tournaments. Any other defenses you want to bring up?
No, I had the Titans down as just a cheap punt against Gardner Minshew. Of course, if you're not playing Minshew, then they're in play. But if you're going to play a Minshew lineup, I would not do that. But yeah, at least early in the week, they look like the best, just punt it off and figure it out later kind of option. Outside of that, yeah, I agree. I like the take on Denver. I also think the Jaguars defense, just for the same reasons as I talked about earlier, both Bo Nix and Trevor Lawrence are highly volatile, which when you're thinking about tournament options at defense, you just want a shot at a pick six or a strip sack or something like that. So I don't mind either of those defenses in tournaments.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Betz, sign us off.
Hard to believe. Week 16 is here, but we'll be back to break it down all on Friday. More props, DFS, all that good stuff. We'll see you then. Enjoy the week, and we'll talk to you on Friday. See ya.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.
'Tis the season of gifting and halls to deck, and the who's and who Newville were in love with new tech. Where can we find Sonos and Samsung and Nintendo, they shouted. Would they find it in one place? This they questioned and doubted. When suddenly a who yelled, Walmart's the place to start! And each who added headphones, TVs, and games to their carts. With Walmart, their shopping was done in a flurry. They cried out, who knew? And ordered their gifts in a hurry. Shop the latest tech gifts in the Walmart app.